Hi, my name is Mr. Kangas, and today we're going to be taking a look at Chapter 5, Section 8, Solving Equations with Rational Numbers. In the previous video, I did a quick example of a one-step equation that had a decimal in it. In this video, we're going to do a quick example of a one-step equation that has a fraction in it. So, for example, again, the process doesn't change whether or not you have decimals or fractions in them. All that changes is the computation, the adding, the subtracting, the multiplying, and dividing. When you're multiplying with decimals, it's a little bit different than if you're multiplying with fractions, which is a little different than if you're multiplying with whole or negative numbers. So there's just a little bit more to remember on that end of things when it comes to these problems. So in this example, we have negative 2/3 x equals negative 7. Right now, the negative 2/3 is being multiplied by x. So, to get rid of it, we would divide both sides by negative 2/3. The other option that we have is to multiply both sides by negative 3/2. And the reason for that is if I divide something by negative 2/3, okay, whatever that something is, when you divide with fractions, the rule is you flip the number on the right and you multiply. So in other words, this would turn into x times negative 3/2 anyways. So you can actually you can skip the dividing step and just multiply by what's known as the multiplicative inverse. So if you want to get rid of a fraction that's being multiplied, you can actually multiply it on the other side by its inverse, by its multiplicative inverse, if that's something you can remember to do. You can actually skip the divide step. If you're one of those people that just need to do things in order, in a way that makes sense to you, then what you would do in this case is you would take negative 2/3 x, divide it by negative 2/3, and do the same thing to the other side. So negative 7 divided by negative 2/3. Now at this point you would need to remember how to divide with fractions. And if you remember how to divide with fractions, that means that you need to flip and multiply. So you flip the number on the right and multiply instead of divide. So, on the right side, we would actually end up with negative 7 times negative 3/2. And what we'd want to do with our negative 7 is actually turn it into a negative 7/1. Because we want it to be in fraction form. So anytime you want to turn a whole number, whether that whole number is negative or positive, if you want to turn it into a fraction, you put it over 1. Okay? And then you multiply straight across. So we're going to do 7 times 3 and get 21, 1 times 2 and get 2. And then we did a negative times a negative, so our answer is going to stay positive because the fraction on the left was negative and the fraction on the right was negative. So that makes our answer positive. On the left side, the negative 2/3 end up canceling out because if I multiply any number by negative 2/3, then divide that same number by negative 2/3, I'm going to end up right back where I started, which in this case is x. So x equals 21/2 in this case. So again, the process was exactly the same. I had a fraction being multiplied by a variable, so to get rid of that fraction, I did the opposite and I divided by that fraction. Just like if I had a regular number there. If I had 4x equals 7, I would divide both sides by 4. The only difference with the fraction was I had a negative 2/3 instead of a 4, so I divided both sides by negative 2/3. So that's really all there is to solving equations with rational numbers. Two-step equations. As long as you understand one-step equations, you should get two-step equations. And if you're this far into the book, then that means that you should already know 1 and 2 step equations, so I shouldn't have to go into an in-depth review on that. If this is your first time just viewing these videos, if you're just a parent trying to help out a kid, you may want to review 1 and 2 step equations. There are videos on them. If you take a look at Chapter 3, Section 3, and Chapter 3, Section 5, there are some detailed videos on how to do 1 and 2 step equations there. The next video will be the last chapter of Chapter 5. That'll be Chapter 5, Section 9, Measures of Central Tendency. In other words, mean, median, and mode.